welcome back to school. I hope you had a great half term. We're starting off a new literacy focus for the next 3 weeks. We're going to be looking at this book, The Great Kapok Tree by Lynn Cherry, and it links in with our topic, which you may or may not have worked out what that is. But I want us to start off by just having a look at that book cover. There's actually quite a lot of detail in there, quite a lot going on. Have a think about what you can see. What does that book cover tell us about where our story might be set? And who might be the main characters in our story? Who might we meet along the way? And what do you think the story could possibly be about? So you might have figured out the setting, you might have figured out the characters. What do you think the story might actually be about? What do you think is going to happen? You can jot down some ideas if you want. But next, let's just move on. Okay, so let's have a look at the focus for today. Today we're really going to be focusing on learning the story, understanding each of the stages of the story. You're going to be following the text as I read it. And then after that, we're going to have a look at our model text. And we're going to pick out some words that we don't understand and find out what they mean, because there is some new vocabulary in this story and we need to make sure that we know what those words mean before we carry on. And then we're going to create actions for the story, which is what we usually do when we're in school as a way of helping us memorise the story as we go along. So, as I was saying, we were having a look. Now it says here, tell your partner. Obviously, if you're in school, that's what you're going to be doing. If you're at home, if you have somebody around who might like to listen and have listen to your ideas about what the story might be. Otherwise, you could just jot it down in your book, what your ideas might be. Okay, let's get going. Let's start by reading the story. And I'm just trying to make it so it will fit into the box that we have here. Hold on just 1 second. Yeah. Right, let's start at the beginning. Put the pictures in there. Right, okay, I think that's the best we're going to get here. Okay, The Great Kapok Tree by Lynn Cherry. 2 men walked into the rainforest. Moments before, the forest had been alive with the sounds of squawking birds and howling monkeys. Now all was quiet as the creatures watched the 2 men and wondered why they had come. The larger man stopped and pointed to a great kapok tree. Then he left. The smaller man took the axe he carried and struck the trunk of the tree. Whack, whack, whack. The sounds of the blows rang through the forest. The wood of the tree was very hard. Chop, chop, chop. The man wiped off the sweat that ran down his face and neck. Whack, chop, whack, chop. Soon the man grew tired. He sat down to rest at the foot of the great kapok tree. Before he knew it, the heat and hum of the forest had lulled him to sleep. Right, before I go on, what do you think is going to happen next? I'm interested to know also what you think that the taller man said to this man who is trying to chop the great kapok tree. Just pause the video there if you need to, and you can write down your ideas or you can share them with somebody. And if you're in school, you can tell your partner what you think is going to happen next. Pause the video. Okay, so let's find out if you're right. A boa constrictor lived in the kapok tree. He slithered down its trunk to where the man was sleeping. He looked at the gash the axe had made in the tree. Then the huge snake slid very close to the man and hissed in his ear, "Senor, this tree is a tree of miracles. It is my home. where generations of my ancestors have lived. Do not chop it down. A bee buzzed in the sleeping man's ear. Signor, my hive is in this kapok tree, and I fly from tree to tree and flower to flower collecting pollen. In this way I pollinate the trees and flowers through the rainforest. You see, all living things depend on one another. Okay, is that what you thought was going to happen? That the animals would come and speak to the man as he slept under the tree? What do you think? Do you think we're going to meet some more animals? Let's have a look. A troop of monkeys scampered down from the canopy of the kapok tree. They chattered to the sleeping man. Signor, we have seen the ways of man. You chop down one tree, then come back for another and another. The roots of these great trees will wither and die, and there will be nothing left to hold the earth in place. When the heavy rains come, the soil will be washed away and the forest will become a desert. A toucan, a macaw, and a cock of the rock flew down from the canopy. Signor, squawked this toucan, you must not cut down this tree. We have flown over the rainforest and seen what happens once you begin to chop down the trees. Many people settle on the land. They set fires to clear the underbrush, and soon the forest disappears. Where once there was life and beauty, only black and smouldering ruins remain. A bright and small tree frog crawled along the edge of a leaf. In a squeaky voice, he piped in the man's ear. Signor, a ruined rainforest means ruined lives. Many ruined lives. You will leave many of us homeless if you chop down this great kapok tree. A jaguar had been sleeping along a branch in the middle of the tree. Because his spotted coat blended into the dappled light and shadows of the understory, no one had noticed him. Now he leapt down and padded silently over to the sleeping man. He growled in his ear, Signor, the kapok tree is home to many birds and animals. If you cut it down, where will I find my dinner? 4 tree porcupines swung down from branch to branch and whispered to the man, Signor, do you know what we animals and humans need in order to live? Oxygen. And Signor, do you know what trees produce? Oxygen. If you cut down the forest, you will destroy that which gives us all life. Several anteaters climbed down the kapok tree with their young clinging to their backs. The unstriped anteater said to the sleeping man, Signor, you are chopping down this tree with no thought for the future, and surely you know that what happens tomorrow depends upon what you do today. The big man tells you to chop down a beautiful tree. He does not think of his own children, who tomorrow must live in a world without trees. A 3-toed sloth had begun climbing down from the canopy when the men first appeared. Only now did she reach the ground. Plodding ever so slowly over to the sleeping man, she spoke in her deep and lazy voice. Signor, how much is beauty worth? Can you live without it? If you destroy the beauty of the rainforest, on what would you feast your eyes? A child from the Yanomamo tribe who lived in the rainforest knelt over the sleeping man. He murmured in his ear, Signor, when you wake, please look upon us all with new eyes. Okay, I want you to just have a think about what you think is going to happen at the end of the story. What do you think the point of all those animals whispering in that man's ear was? What were they trying to do? Pause the video now, talk to your partners, or write it down in your jotter. Pause it now. Okay, hopefully you've had some good ideas about what you think is going to happen at the end of the story. Let's find out. The man awoke with a start. Before him stood the rainforest child, and all around him, staring, were the creatures who depended upon the great kapok tree. What wondrous and rare animals they were! The man looked about and saw the sun streaming through the canopy. Spots of bright light glowed like jewels amidst the dark green forest. Strange and beautiful plants seemed to dangle in the air, suspended from the great kapok tree. The man smelled the fragrant perfume of their flowers. He felt the steamy mist rising from the forest floor, but he heard no sound, for the creatures were strangely silent. The man stood and picked up his axe. He swung back his arm as though to strike the tree. Suddenly he stopped. He turned and looked at the animals and the child. He hesitated. Then he dropped the axe and walked out of the rainforest. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that story. I certainly did. Let me just see if I can get rid of this. There we go, perfect. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is either if you're in school, you can chat with a partner about what you liked about the story, whether it reminded you of anything, whether it makes you think about anything you might have heard about in the wider world, and what you think some of the issues might be that this story raises. If you're at home, you can have a think about those things. You can maybe jot down a few ideas into your jotter, and you can pause the video while you do that now. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance, excuse me, to discuss that with a few people or write down your ideas. Oh dear. Okay, let's move on. So these were the sort of questions we were going to have a look at. What did you think of the story? What did you enjoy? What did it mean to you? Why do you think it might be an important story? What did it remind you of? What do you already know about the rainforest? And what do you know from listening to the story? So again, just have a pause, either speaking to somebody who's near you if you are in school, or you can jot down your ideas in your book. Pause the video there so you can see the questions that we need to answer. Right, okay, hopefully you have done that then. Brilliant. So as you might have gathered, our topic is going to be rainforests this half term, and we're going to be finding out about lots of things about rainforests. We have here our model text. Let me just see if I can get it all onto one page. There we go, let me move it over. Okay, so this is the version of the story that we're going to be working on over the next 3 weeks. And our first, I'm going to read through it actually for you so you can see it's basically the same, it's a slightly condensed version. One hot sunny day, two men walked into the rainforest. The larger man pointed to a great kapok tree and then left. The smaller man took his heavy axe and struck the trunk of the tree with all his might. Whack, 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 chop, chop, chop. Soon the man grew tired. He sat down to rest underneath the great kapok tree. Before he knew it, the heat and hum of the forest had lulled him into a deep and peaceful sleep. A long, strong boa constrictor with fierce yellow eyes lived in the kapok tree. Suddenly he slowly slithered down to where the man was sleeping and hissed in his ear, "Signor, this is a tree of miracles. It is my home, where all of my family have lived. Do not chop it down." As suddenly as he appeared, he disappeared again amongst the long grass which covered the rainforest floor. Then a troop of excitable monkeys scampered down from the canopy of the kapok tree, their long tails flicking the air behind them. They chattered hurriedly to the sleeping man. "Signor, you chopped down one tree and then another. Without these trees there will be nothing left to hold the earth in place. When the rain comes, the soil will be washed away and the forest will become a desert." The monkeys then scrambled back to their favourite tree, which was opposite the man, found their favourite branch, and sat and watched to see what would happen next. Next, a small bright green frog with crimson red eyes crawled along a leaf which was gently swaying in the light breeze, tickling the man's ear. He quietly squeaked into the man's ear, "Signor, a ruined rainforest means ruined lives. You will leave us homeless if you chop down this great kapok tree." Once he had said his message, the frog turned and hopped away, taking shelter within a nearby clump of jade green leaves. A few minutes later, 4 porcupines scampered down from the tree, their great spikes sticking up on end menacingly. They gently whispered to the man, "Signor, do you know what all animals and humans need to live? Oxygen. And do you know what trees produce? Oxygen. If you cut down the trees, you will destroy what gives us life." Then they ambled off across the rainforest in search of water, for they were extremely thirsty. Finally, a jaguar leapt down from a branch and padded over to the man, growling, "Signor, the kapok tree is home to many birds and animals. If you cut it down, where will I find my dinner?" A little while later, a small child from a nearby tribe who lived in the rainforest tiptoed over to the man and knelt beside him. He murmured softly in his ear, "Signor, when you awake, please look at us with new eyes." The small child then edged away and sat back on a rock, watching the man intently. The man awoke with a start. All around him stood the creatures who depended upon the great kapok tree. The man looked about and saw the sun streaming through the trees. He smelled the flowers and he felt the mist rising from the forest floor, but he heard no sound. The creatures were strangely silent. The man picked up his axe and swung back his arm, ready to strike the tree. Suddenly he stopped and looked at the animals and the child. He dropped the axe and walked out of the magnificent rainforest. Okay, so that's our model text we're going to be basing our writing on. So it's a slightly shorter version of the story. Some of the animals have been removed just to make it easier for us to work with. Right, so the first job we have to do this morning is have a closer look at the text and find out any words you're unsure of. Okay, so you should have a copy of the model text. You don't have to print it. If you have got the capacity, you could screenshot it, edit it on the screenshot, highlighting the words you don't understand, and then re-screenshot it and save it that way. You can, of course, print it if you want to, or if you don't want to print it, you could just keep the model text up online and just write down the words into your book that you don't understand. Any of those methods will do. I'm just trying to avoid everybody having to print everything. So what I want you to do first of all is have a good look at the text and just underline or highlight or write down in a list any words you do not understand. So I want you to pause the video now and do that. Okay, so in addition, I want you to make sure that you've underlined the following words or written the following words in your book as well. I want you to definitely have looked these up as well. So we have ancestors, pollinate, and canopy. So have a look in the dictionary, look them up, and also look up the other words that you identified that you didn't understand the meaning of. And that's our first activity for this morning. So you can pause the video while you complete that activity, and then we'll go on to activity number 2. Right, so hopefully you've done all that dictionary work now. And the next thing we have to do, as we always do with our new stories, is we come up with some actions for our stories. So with your model text in front of you, I want you to come up with some actions for your story. And when you've done that, you can, if possible, perhaps take pictures of you doing some of the key actions or a short video of you doing actions to the story. If not, just keep them in your head to help you. We'll be redoing them again tomorrow. And you can upload them to Dojo as well as your dictionary work that you've already done this morning. Fantastic! I'll see you back here tomorrow for lesson number 2 of the Great Kapok Tree, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Bye!